Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Grade 11 Mathematical Literacy webinar. We will begin shortly. I would just like to allow another minute or so for the rest of the attendees to join into this webinar. So please be patient and don't go anywhere. Within the next minute or so, we will start. Okay, it does look like the majority of the learners are all ready to start. So let's go on. Okay, so my name is Kimberly Brits. I'm the Educational Specialist for Mathematical Literacy. And before we begin this webinar, let's just cover some of the basics. I do assume that most of you are familiar with this, but just bear with me so that we just can cover through these following points. If you are struggling to hear me, make sure your audio is on and your speaker volume is turned up. You will automatically be muted when joining the session. Should you have any questions, you can ask your question in the question box below or on your right, or you can simply raise your hand. To raise your hand, click the icon on your dashboard below or on your right. Download this presentation and additional resources in the handout box below or on your right. You will also find all this information in the question box below or on your right. Remember to send us your questions. Attendees are encouraged to ask questions and leave comments. However, irrelevant or inappropriate comments will result in the attendee being dismissed from the session. If we did not get to your question, please send an email to academics@impact.co.za. Questions in the question box will be answered and made available afterwards. If you did not receive the questions and answers, please send an email to info@impact.co.za. Visit the Impact YouTube channel for recordings of this session. Okay, so before we start off with today's topics of discussion, I would just like to make sure that all of you are finished, or at least nearly finished, with the work that you were supposed to cover in term 2. We are in uncertain circumstances at the moment, so I would like to encourage all of you to finish with term 2 work if you are not yet finished, so that you can start off with term 3's work as soon as possible to avoid falling behind in the future. Okay, so for today's discussion, I would like to look at the suggested work schedule for term 3. I would like to have a look at our June and November examination regarding an overview of paper 1, an overview of paper 2, as well as the weightings per topic. And then lastly, I would just like to look at some additional resources. So please stay with me. I know we are not covering any content regarding mathematical literacy topics, but this is valuable information and it would give you a great idea of what to expect and how to prepare for the examination exam papers that lie ahead. Okay, so first of all, let's start off by looking at term 3's suggested work schedule. Now, I would like to just stress that this is a suggested work schedule. So you are not it is not compulsory for you to stick to this schedule. This is only a type of framework, so to give you an idea more or less of what amount of time you should spend on each topic. So let's quickly have a look here. I would just like to first get my laser pointer on. There we go. Okay, so first of all, the first 3 weeks of term 3, you are going to spend on measurements. So this is going to cover the topics of perimeter, area, and volume. The second topic that you will move to is maps, plans, and other representations of the physical world, which is going to cover models and plans. And again, you will have more or less 3 weeks to cover this topic. The third topic is going to be on finances, which is going to focus mainly on taxation, and you will have approximately 1 week to cover this topic. Your last topic will be probability, and probability you have more or less 2 weeks to cover that context. Now, extremely important, your assessments that you will be required to complete during term 3 is an assignment, which is going to count out of 50 marks, and a control test that is also going to count out of 50 marks. So control test is better known as a term test. Now, extremely important, if you wish to have a better or detailed description of the content that will be tested in each assessment, please refer to your assessment planner, which is available on myimpact.co.za. There it gives you an indication of which assessments will be covered in which term, as well as the content which is going to be tested on in each assessment, as well as the marks. So for that details, please refer to your assessment planner. Now, this is strictly for all the impact learners. So if you are not an impact learner, you will need to ask your teacher or your tutor for this information. Okay, so let's start right off with paper 1. Now, the points that we will be discussing today is true for both the June and the November examination. The information that I used here is true only for the November exams. First of all, the topics that you will be tested on or assessed on is finances, measurement, maps, plans, and other representations of the physical world, as well as data handling. Your November paper 1 will count out of 100 marks, and you will have 2 hours to complete the paper. Now, paper 1 is better known as your basic skills paper. Now, what I mean by that is that the majority of the paper is made up out of basic skills and factual knowledge regarding mathematical literacy. But we will dive into that a little bit deeper in the next slide. So just hold that in mind. Now, the paper will consist out of 5 questions. Question 1 will most likely, or one question will be on finances, 1 on measurement, 1 on maps, plans, and other representations, and 1 on data handling. The 5th question will be a mix of these topics. So all of these topics will be integrated into the 5th question. Each question can contain more than one context. So what I mean by that is if you are doing question 1, let's say, for example, question 1 is on finances, the majority of the questions, you might come across another context, for instance, measurement being tested in question 1, which is mainly focusing on finances. So you will find that the topics, they might integrate with each other throughout the paper. Then for the last marker here that I want to discuss, probability will be assessed, but it will be integrated in the context of other questions rather than being a question on its own. By that I mean that within these 5 questions, you will be tested on probability, but there is not going to be a single question dedicated only to probability. Okay, so I did mention that this is a basic skills paper, your first paper. Therefore, the paper is mainly going to be on cognitive levels of level 1, level 2, and level 3. So you will see level 4 gives a 0% indication here, as there will be no level 4 questions in paper 1. Now, level 1 is your knowing questions, and this will be the majority of your paper. So 60% of your paper will be on level 1 questions. 35% of your paper will be on applying routine procedures in familiar contexts. Only 5% of your paper will be on level 3 questions, which is applying multi-step procedures in a variety of contexts. So this should give you an indication that paper 1 is the easier or the simpler paper from the 2 papers that you will be writing. Now, once again, let's quickly just have a look at what I mean by these levels and what type of questions you can expect in each level. So for paper 1, it's only going to be level 1, 2, and 3 questions. Now, in level 1, you will find questions where they test you on the use of mathematical facts and vocabulary, where you will need to predict answers and rounding off of values, and you will also be tested on theoretical knowledge. Now, just to give you an example on a type of question that you will find with level 1 can be to read information off a electricity bill, for example. So if they ask you they give you the electricity bill and you are required to determine what the date is that the electricity bill was created, or to determine to who the electricity bill was sent, or who the municipality is that sent out the electricity bill. Now, level 2 questions will be to complete known procedures, apply skills with more than one step, draw conclusions from given information, and then basic calculations learned from examples and exercises. So level 2 questions, they're not intricate questions, they're pretty straightforward, and you will find that level 2 questions are similar to the examples and exercises that you have been doing throughout the term. Now, an example of a level 2 question will be to, for example, determine the value of determine a value before VAT was added. So pretty straightforward, not complex skills, and it's simply 1 to 2 steps that are required for you to solve these type of questions. Then level 3, I just want to state again, only 5% will be level 3 questions of paper 1, and this is now focusing on complex calculations and high order arguments, as well as no stipulated path to follow and unique conceptual and holistic approaches to the problem. Now, an example of a level 3 question will be to draw a graph to illustrate the income and expenses of a business. So you will find that you are going to make use of more than one step to solve this problem. You are going to make use of more than one skill to solve this problem. And you are going to have to obtain a holistic approach, meaning you have to keep the bigger picture, the whole picture of your problem in mind in order to solve the problem. So I hope that you understand these levels and that you can see that the majority, 60% of paper 1 comes from level 1. So straightforward theoretical knowledge. And this is why I stress it's extremely important to actually study your mathematical literacy, vocabulary, and mathematical facts, especially for your level 1 type of questions. So at this point, at this stage, I would just like you all to just raise your hand to indicate that you are still with me, that you are listening, and that you are paying attention to today's webinar. Thank you so much. I see many of you are raising your hand. I see some Afrikaans names and surnames, so I would just like to remind you, although this webinar is being presented in English, in the handout section you will see that I did make the Afrikaans webinar slides available. So although this is just being presented in English, you can still go and download the Afrikaans notes for today's webinar. They are available in the handout section. You will see that the English slides are also available in the handout section, so just make sure that you download the correct language. Okay, now let's continue. Let's have a look at paper 2. So once again, the same topics will be covered in paper 2. Once again, finance, measurement, maps, plans, and other representations, as well as data handling. Once again, this information is for your November examination. The reason for it being your November examination is because there is yet to be any clarity regarding your June examination. So for the purpose of today's webinar, we will be looking at November examinations. So the total for this paper will be 100. Once again, you will have 2 hours to complete the paper. Now, paper 2 is better known as your application paper for the reason that you will be making use of multiple step procedures. Therefore, once again, if we look at the levels, it's going to be a level 2, 3, and 4, where you are going to make use of more than one step to solve each problem. Now, this paper will consist out of 4 to 5 questions. Once again, a question allocated on each of the topics, and keeping in mind that the contexts may be integrated. So once again, if there is a fifth question, it will be an integration of all the topics. Okay, and then once again, probability will be assessed, but it is going to be integrated in one of the 5 questions, and there will not be a single question allocated only to probability. Now, if we look at the levels with regard to paper 2, you will see that it is only going to be level 2, level 3, and level 4 questions. And level 1 is 0%. So no straightforward, no mathematical knowledge questions in level in this paper 2. So level 2 refers to applying routine procedures in familiar context, and this will be 25% of your paper. Level 3, applying multiple step procedures in a variety of contexts, 35% of paper 2. And then level 4, reasoning and reflecting. And this is going to make up the majority of your paper, as it is going to be 40% of the questions asked in paper 2. If we have a look again at the type of questions that you can expect for paper 2, level 2 remains the same, familiar, straightforward, similar to examples and exercises that you have completed throughout the term. Level 3 is again complex calculations, higher order arguments, no stipulated path, and multiple steps to complete the problem. And then level 4 is unseen and not routine problems and higher order thinking. So what we mean by that is where you will need to make use of all the skills to your availability and all the knowledge that you have over all the topics covered. And from those skills and from your knowledge, you will need to make use of the appropriate skills and steps in order to solve level 4 type of questions. Just an example of a level 4 question, you can be asked to choose a strategy to compare costs of 2 electricity systems in order to determine which system is the most cost effective. Now, what I mean by that is you will have the choice whether to make use of a graph, to make use of a table, in order to compare 2 electricity systems with the aim to determine which electricity system will be the most cost effective. So once again, multiple steps, multiple skills being tested, and you will need to analyze and apply and decide for yourself how you are going to structure the problem solving around a specific question. Now let's have a look at the weighting. So I would just like to take a moment to explain to you this first section in the table. It refers to basic skill topics. Now, basic skill topics is the interpretation and communication of answers and calculations, numbers and operations with numbers, and then patterns, relationships, and representations. So in short, your basic skills refers to rounding off, estimation, making comparisons, analyzing, and drawing graphs. So simple, basic mathematical skills. And you will find that there is no specific weighting allocated to these topics, as these topics are integrated in every single question and in every single application topic. Now, if we look at our application topics here at the bottom of the table, this indicates to you the percentage of each topic that will be covered in a paper. So let's use paper 1 as an example. In paper 1, 35% of the paper will be on finances. 20% of the paper will be on measurement. 15% of the paper on maps, plans, and other representations. And then 25% on data handling. And then lastly, a minimum of 5% will be allocated towards probability. So this is a great table to use just to give you an idea of what topics will be asked, will the majority of the questions be on. It also gives you a great idea of how to prepare and how to study and on what topics to focus the most, as this is going to tell you the majority of the questions are on finances, so it is an important topic to cover. Data handling will be next, also another extremely important topic, as 25% of a paper does count towards a lot. Then lastly for today, just additional resources. First of all, use our guided learning platform. We have a solve by chat function on our guided learning platform. So whenever you come across a question or you are busy with questions and you do not understand something, make use of that solve by chat function so that one of our tutors can be readily to assist you with any inquiries that you may have. And then if you are working from your study guide or from other additional resources, or you are working through past papers and you come across something that you need assistance with, please send us an inquiry to academics@impact.co.za so that one of our academic specialists can assist you with your inquiry. Now, I would like all of you to just remember to submit your questions for today. If you have any questions regarding the weighting or what to be expected in paper 1 and 2, please leave me those questions in the question box so that I can get back to you via email. And then lastly, remember please to download today's webinar slides in the handout section. It is available in both English and Afrikaans. Thank you so much for joining in today. I hope all of you learned something.